And we're back with the Entertainment and Sports Spotlight podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Marie, and it's great to have you guys joining us today. Hope you all survived Thanksgiving, Black Friday, and Cyber Monday, the holidays of halfway through, and we've got more coming up. Great time of the year. I know I had a great time. I hope you did as well. So, holiday time frame. Consumer spends this past weekend about a groundbreaking of $44 billion over the weekend, and companies spend a gross of average about $7 billion in ad spend and commercial spend alone to get their products out there to consumers. And this is going to tap into a different world of the film and entertainment industry. We're focusing on commercial. And there's nobody better to do that with than somebody who has worked in the industry for a very long time. He has worked with great national brands of AT&T, Coca-Cola, and American Airlines. We want to welcome to the stage here our special guest, Stewart Cohen, who is very graciously joining us today. So, Stewart, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate how you.
Thanks, Ashley. Appreciate it. I can't believe those numbers, what you threw down from last weekend, Thanksgiving. Wow.
Yeah, a little scary.
Yeah, it's great. Well, I mean, I guess people have cash.
Yeah, in a world where there's none, supposedly, right? There's something out there, and people are spending it.
Exactly.
Stewart, tell me a little bit of how you got into the commercial space, right? You didn't wake up one day when you were 5 years old and say, you know what, I want to go do commercials. So tell us a little bit about that backstory of how you got into
Well,
that.
yeah, and that's a story. I mean, I've been asked, but really I thought about it. I love visuals. I love great visuals. And I truly got into it by watching movies and seeing just really, really well shot content. And it just made me want to shoot. And that's quite honestly how I got into it.
Yeah, I appreciate that because my family will tell you, if you ever talk to them, that I had a camera, oh my gosh, I think since we had little tiny handheld cameras, or they weren't tiny, they were big back in the day. And I used to go around and just shoot stuff and put it together and edit it on the, crudest programs that we had back in the day, but so much fun. And I just loved getting to create that, finished product, something that people could look at and say, oh, wow, that's really cool. I love that, so yeah.
I agree. And I didn't think I had cameras growing up. And then people in my family have found pictures of me, when I was 6 with a camera around my neck. But it wasn't really until probably college that I really got totally, it became an obsession from then on. Yeah. And it's never stopped.
Was it photography at first and then you decided to do video, or what kind of?
Well, I started out as a still photographer and I worked as an apprentice as still photographers. And then I went back to film school. And I mean, I think film, like the moving picture, always intrigued me. But back in the day, when we were still shooting on film, I know there's a resurrection of it, but when film was the thing, it was really hard as an independent person or a small crew to create like the kind of visuals we were seeing in movies, because they were costly to do, and moving cameras was not as easy as they are, like in terms of, dollies and stuff like that. So I felt like the still photography really allowed me to get like epic visuals on my own with me alone or me and an assistant, and then, I went back to film school. I mean, this is like way back now, in the late 90s, and started doing commercials at that point. And, once you get on a set with people that really know what they're doing, that could really help you craft your visuals, I mean, it's a whole new world.
Yeah, that's got to be a really different feeling, going from what they would call indie production now to the actual, you're in studio, you're on premise.
And now, I mean, granted, the world has changed in that period of time, but I still think a great visual is a great visual, and it still excites me, to look at whether it's movies, television shows, or even an Instagram feed, like with like super great visuals. And then of course, as I grew up, you start to realize that, well, a visual without a story is kind of useless. So then you have to wrap a story around it. So, if you think about a still photograph, like that's got to be a great visual, and you need to be able to see the story right there in that one picture, in that one frame. And I feel like it's nearly harder to tell that story in a single frame than it is to tell it in, a long form video. Because you have the ability to, of course, stretch it out and talk about all the nuance. But the hard thing also, then you realize when you have a big story to tell in 30 seconds is not as long as you think, when you need to tell the whole story. And then in today's day and world, of course, you need to tell that same story in 15 seconds and then now in 6 seconds. And it's like, so it's nearly, the worlds are converging. It's not a still photograph, but it might be in 6 seconds you need to tell the whole story, or 15 seconds. So I think it makes a director and any kind of filmmaker a better filmmaker to have learned how to tell the stories in a short amount of time. Because then once you start, you get into whether it's shorts or even episodics, where you have some time to stretch out the drama, of course, then, it makes that a little easier.
That's a really good point. That's actually one of my questions for you was, how do you get that story? When you're given a brief, right? What is your processes to get this condensed down into 30 seconds? Do you ever have to go, I'm sure you do, have to go back and do some negotiations, say, listen, guys, we won't be able to do all of this in this, right. What does that look like? What's the creative processes behind that?
I have that feeling a lot. And then, I've been really fortunate to have worked with some amazing creative directors or art directors from agencies that understand the concept of the commercial and, can hone in on, no, we just need that little bit, we just need that piece, and to help move the story along. And I think a great writer, of course, writing always is important. And a great writer can take a story, like a whole story of a day, and put it into 30 seconds. And for the viewer to be able to understand what happened during that day in 30 seconds, it's a craft. So there is craft attached to all of this. And I think the commercial filmmaking world has started to lose a little sight of how delicate or how really telling the craft is, but anyway, it's a craft, and I think it's a great art, and I think it's something we should all appreciate.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were talking about film here and art, right? So people are wanting to go back to film. They want to go back to I think it's the nostalgia. They want to go back to that. There's a huge pushback for the 70s and the 90s and all that stuff, right? So I think that's where they're kind of going towards. You've got the vast majority of differences. We got AI, and then we've got film. And so people want to go back to that. What is that mindset kind of spark in you?
Well, it's funny because I grew up shooting film, so I'm totally comfortable in film. Personally, I don't necessarily feel the pull to go back to film. I think it is a nostalgia thing, like what you're talking about. And maybe it's more nostalgic for people who never shot film, because it was like, oh, those days of film. And I think, and the one thing we were just talking here at the studio this week, I could shoot film in my sleep. I could loan a film mag like nobody's business. Yeah. I came up through the ranks doing that. I don't necessarily feel like that's going to help your story, unless, of course, it's really an important part of the story. But the medium is just the medium, Yeah. The medium's what you're telling the story on, whether it's film or digital. And now today in digital, there's so many ways we could degrade a file to make it look like film also. And I did see a movie recently that was shot on film, and they were doing it because they wanted to mimic like the early 80s. But right. Before I knew why they had shot it on film, because there was a Q&A after it, I'm looking at it and I'm just thinking to myself, this doesn't look great. Like there's just no midtones, and it was just really mushy to me. And yeah. And it's weird. And maybe, you know, over time, we've realized that we've come to expect more detail and I don't know. I mean, so if I was to shoot in the next project I shoot, when I do shoot on film, I will do film tests again. We used to do a lot of film tests. We used to test different film stocks for projects. We used to test different ways to process the film, like for a specific project. So you create this distinct look before you started shooting. Now, here's the rub on that for people that didn't come from that. Once you shoot it that way, you shot it that way. Like there's no going back, you know? Yeah. And that was the wonderful thing about, you know, when the page turned and we got into really good digital, probably like about 2015-ish, it started getting really good, I guess. Yeah. You know, you could look at things a bunch of different ways, and then you could change it if you wanted to, if you decided you wanted to go a different direction. With film, you're there, you know? Yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you too. Like, it's so much harder to get one specific look. And then once you got it, like you said, that's it. I mean, you can't edit that away. There's, you know, I think once people realize how much more work it is to shoot through film, do you think that trend's going to die off pretty quick?
Oh, I don't know. You know, I think there's a big push toward what was, because of how everything is moving so fast in our industry. And, you know, the thing about film is you could hang on to it. And I do think the great thing about film is, yes, you might have tested all these processes and film stocks and stuff like that, and you created this piece of work. And it is a definitive piece of work in that style. So, and, you know, and there's something to be said for that. And I think that was something that we did lose when we went to digital, when things could be rendered so many different ways. But regardless, I don't know if people will get tired of it. I think it's a trend that, hey, let's roll with it. Let's do it, you know?
Yeah. So. I think it'll be interesting to see what comes of it. And it'll probably be like the new age film.
Yeah, I did read something this week that they said that in 2025, the same amount of film was shot as that was shot in 2014. So that's a lot. And 2014, like, I think that was kind of when it was starting to tail off. So we're back to that level. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. It'll be interesting. I know it'll be a different version of film too. You know, the cameras, I don't think people are going to pull out those big old cameras and the reels like they did in the back, you know, back in the days.
You know, like an Arri, you know, 435s and stuff like that. And I do think if you're an independent filmmaker, if you don't own your own cameras, a lot of rental houses will really cut you great deals on renting film cameras because they just sit on shelves.
Yeah, that's very true.
So I think that's also a plus for the indie filmmakers, for sure.
Yeah, that is very true. What are some risks that people run into on the film side when you're shooting on film? What are some major risks from somebody who's worked with it a lot?
The only thing I could think of, I mean, there are so many major risks, especially if you have film. Like how it goes back to, is the mag loaded right? You know, so it's nearly like you're going to need to get ACs that have worked in film, because you need people that have done a lot of film. So, you know, is the film loaded right? You know, then somebody this week was telling me, you know, they hadn't heard the term checking the gate.
Exactly.
In a long time. And I honestly, if I pulled out a film camera today, I'd probably forget to check the gate, you know. So that's where you're checking for dust or something that was stuck in there, which would destroy it all. I think exposure, you know, don't forget, like, a lot of the younger filmmakers have grown up without using light meters. They just look at their monitors. So we used to use light meters, you know, and used to check ratios between the highlights and the shadows and stuff like that. And that's a craft. And I think it was a craft that unfortunately, you know, got pushed under the carpet with a lot of people. And so maybe it's a good thing if we go back to that and people really learn to light things. You know, the other thing with digital, it's so much more forgiving, right? So you look at these cameras today, you know, whether it's an Alexa or a Red or something, with 16 frames, 16 stops of dynamic range. I mean, we didn't used to have that in film. You had what, seven stops or something. And so that's why there's so much more detail these days. But I think everyone should try it. I think every filmmaker, whether you have that hankering to go for the nostalgia or not, just go to your local rental house, get an Arri 435, get a couple of mags of film, and just go out and shoot some stuff and check it out and do some tests too. I remember doing tests with film, and you could push the heck out of film and make it do some really crazy stuff. And I think what we were seeing in the commercial world in, I don't know, late 90s, early 2000s, where people were really, really putting film to the test and cameras to the test and trying different things and different. You remember there was cross processing or somebody on a LinkedIn post that was talking about like shooting commercials way back when. They were talking about how exciting it was to be able to go to, Company 3 in LA and ask them to crush the blacks, which was so,
oh my goodness.
It was like, well, why were we doing that? It's like, so you don't want any detail in your blacks. But that was a thing. I remember like this executive producer, when the first production company I was with, saying, oh yeah, we're going to do this and we're going to crush the blacks. It's like, okay.
Wow.
It was a look. It was a thing,
Yeah. I love that. That's great. Wow. Yeah. Crush the blacks. I have not heard that in a very long time.
Yeah.
And wow. That's awesome.
So you got two terms today you haven't heard. Check the gate and crush the blacks.
Exactly. I remember the check the gate, and for the longest time, like people would still say that in the industry, even though they weren't using the film cameras. And you're like, why are they saying that? And then they'll learn. But I mean, I haven't heard that in a very long time.
No.
So yeah, it's a whole different world, a whole different ball game, and it's interesting that you've have the commercial and film side too, because you've worked in both. And what is interesting is that you've gone into more of the licensing side of everything, which I guess kind of comes along with that commercial avenue, right? You gotta and everything nowadays, but AI is kind of changing what that looks like.
Well, that it will change, but let's leave AI out of the conversation. Yeah. But the licensing thing, that just happened by happenstance, like way back when, where I got approached to people saying, this content that you had the rights to, could you relicense it? And so I started doing that way back early, and actually it was right when Getty was just starting out, when they purchased their first footage library. I was instrumental in working with them to start shooting content specifically for licensing, and which was great though, because back to the fact about just going out and shooting, I think for any filmmaker, any photographer, the key to really staying fresh is to be out there, be shooting, create new stuff all the time. And what that helped me learn was, like, I could go out and shoot for myself, and then I would try to license it, and I would see what would license also. But you were also staying fresh because you were being fed what the trends were, and whether it's with camera trends or back to processing trends or lensing, when we had the tilt shift lenses. But the thing is, I didn't need a job to go do it. It kind of empowered me to just go out, spend my own money, and just go out and shoot, because luckily enough, the licensing money was helping to fund that. And at the same time, it helped to fund creating new work, which then I used on my reel or in my portfolio to go out and get commercial work. So it kind of fed the beast, so to speak. And I think one thing, as a, like any artist, like if you're a painter, you got to keep painting. If you're a writer, you got to keep writing. So true. And the thing about filmmaking is it's expensive to go out there and do it on your own. So the licensing allowed me to, it gave me that kind of freedom to go out and do it,
Yeah, no, I was going to ask you too, like, how good of a passive income was that? I know starting out,
it was good.
Okay. That's good.
I'll just say it was really good. And the operative word there was.
That's a bummer.
No, there's still juice in the market. There is still juice in the market. I'm still a believer. I don't know if you read. I mean, I actually own a licensing company.
Yep.
We license video. And granted, I think, there's so much content out there currently that the price is not what it used to be. But at the same time, you could still make it, you could still make some good passive income. And as we've discussed about being, independent creatives, passive income is good. Anything you could get to keep, all we want to do is continue to hone our craft. We want to continue to shoot. And I think anything you could do to help the artists continue to do their craft is important. So I think, one thing we try to offer is, and we do this with painters and with photographers and filmmakers, is we try to license their content to a multitude of industries for as much as we can and generate income for them so people have some passive income. Living in Texas, there are people here that have passive income from oil wells. We don't have that. So we have to do it from our existing work.
Yeah, that's super smart. And I know that you acquired SuperStock, which is one of the reasons for the licensing. But how do you decide how to license a project, especially because there's different avenues, right? There's using it on a website. There's using it on for a film or some sort of feature. There's different ways, how many views you're allowed to, there's different ways to do it. So how do you guys decide? You look at a project and say, how do we decide what the market value is for this?
Well, I think the industry, unfortunately, has created its own market value. I think scarcity is an important thing. When you get into documentaries, and if you have something that nobody else has, obviously you could charge more money. Rights are very, very important. Any kind of intellectual property. So if there's talent in there, is the talent been taken care of? Do you have proper releases? Are you indemnified? There's all sorts of legal things. To license, a sunrise over a cornfield, they're a dime a dozen because there's so many out there. But if you're trying to license, Bradley Cooper walking down Park Avenue in New York, that one is going to cost. So the studios do some licensing as well. So the big movie studios, we don't deal with that world. We deal more with the commercial world.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. And kind of getting back to, you have to have the rights to the people that are in the productions, in the shots, right? So what does that look like as far as casting goes? Or if somebody comes to you with a project and say, hey, I did get a picture of Bradley Cooper walking down Main Street there. What do you guys have to go through in order to
if you don't have a release and you're going to license it, it's best to try to get a release. In the commercial space, there's a lot of projects that they have specific rights that they've purchased, and those are the rights that that can be used for unless it's negotiated downstream. So I think rights are really important. I think the whole copyright, the copyright law and the copyright enforcement is important as well. I do feel like some of that, it's getting a little looser because there's so much content out there. But at the same time, as a creative, you need to make sure you're covering yourself and you have the proper rights, or else, it could just be pretty ugly downstream if something, rears its head and comes after you.
Yeah. Do you have any good programs or companies that help with copywriting issues or ways to keep your stuff from getting stolen?
There are companies out there that scan the web. You have to upload your content and then they scan the web and they come back to you and say, is this a legitimate usage of your content? And the biggest challenge there is on like say a blog or something, they might pick something up on a blog. Well, the person that has the blog really does not have deep pockets, and it's really not worth going after someone like that. But yet, and I don't think, and for the most part, I don't think big companies steal. They really don't. Procter and Gamble doesn't want to get into a tussle. I don't think they would steal knowingly. So we hope people live by the laws and by the rules. And for the bad actors, hopefully it comes out in the wash. I think there are certain people that spend their careers trying to chase down infringements.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm more of, I do it on the surface. I mean, I really feel like I'd rather be shooting and being creative and being out there doing it, as opposed to just being in the trenches trying to find every little infringement out there.
Right. Yeah. It can get exhausting, and it's too much. Yeah. And there's companies out there that do it. They do scour the web, and there's some that'll do it for you for free in exchange for, I think they get percentage off of what they make or whatever. So yeah, I mean, that doesn't sound like, you guys do the best you can to prevent, and then to other companies, kind of like, there's a location to have your security system, and if that doesn't work, then the police will help. Find
exactly. No, and we do manage it. Like we manage every license. But yes, at a certain point, and of course, I mean, not to get into a whole licensing conversation, but there's now, I mean, this came about in the early 2000s, like a licensing model called, RF, like royalty free, meaning once you purchase that asset, you could use it wherever you want for as long as you want. And a lot of the big licensing houses like Shutterstock, they only use RF because they don't want to they don't want to track rights. They don't want to chase usages. It's like, it's an RF, boom, you license it, boom, and you go down the road. When you get into the people, like the real specific content, like that you're licensing for feature films, a lot of that stuff is rights managed, meaning, they are purchasing specific rights. So.
Yeah, no, that's very true.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I'm good.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, no, it's very true. And the whole licensing thing is a different ballgame. So I think it's really cool that you were in that. And I think it goes right along with what you do with commercial, what you do with photography. And I've got a couple questions for you before we wrap up here, but what do you enjoy the most about doing a shoot and getting that ready? I know you talked a lot about like what makes that shoot, and the casting, the people in it are usually the ones that, and it is the same, right? In film industry, you need names. What your actor does on screen makes or breaks your film. So in the same way with taking photos, the same way with a commercial side, especially when you have to condense a huge story into such a small segment, a snapshot. So how does the casting look like on that side for you?
I think, listen, casting is important in anything because the people on the other side of the camera are the people telling the story. I enjoy the whole process. I really enjoy the casting process because really a good cast will make or break a project. And, the difference between a long form content like we were talking about where a studio wants a name versus a commercial, they're not necessarily looking for name talent, but they're looking for talent that could really bring the story. And I think it's really important to dig deep to find people that can really bring the story. And a lot of times we found people that were not necessarily the most seasoned actors, but they just kind of came in for the audition and they just nailed it. And it's like, that's what you got to go with. It's a kind of a gut feeling you have to go with. Another thing we've done, and I've done this recently again, is we had a script and I pitched the idea that I think it just needs to be kind of humorous. Why don't we go with an improv troupe? And we've done that where we get the improv troupe in, they know the story, what we're trying to tell, what the spot is. And we usually have multiple cameras on it. And we just say, go, and you let these improv people go. And it's amazing. We did a commercial with Garth Brooks where he was the receptionist at Frito-Lay. and it was just improv actors coming up to him at the receptionist desk. And it was really funny because we didn't know what they were going to say, and we didn't know what his response was going to be. And I mean, that's kind of a gutsy thing for an agency to be okay with, and for a client to be okay with. But I think it was super successful, as opposed to like a canned joke that, a canned joke will either be super funny or is going to fall flat. So this way we had a lot to choose from, and I think it was pretty funny.
That is super cool. I love that. Man, that would have been a lot of fun to film. Just like have everything ready to go. Make sure you got all your angles ready and let them have fun. That's great.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And what other avenues besides casting agencies have you used or that you consider? I know you said, improv and stuff. What would you suggest to people that would want to get into commercial acting or do any type of commercial casting? Something that's a little bit out of the normal of finding an agency.
So actors either have agents, most of them have agents, and some don't, but yet now, even if you're a young aspiring actor that without an agent, there are sites, I think it's like Actors Access or Backstage or Breakdown, that breakdowns get posted, so castings get posted there, and you could upload your own audition. And I think if you're an aspiring actor, that's a good way to do it. I think, and then what happens is what we do is we send those castings to all the relevant agents as well, and then they submit people. So that's how we look. All the talent agents in the area or wherever with talent that might fit the role. And then sometimes independent actors that are just looking that come to audition. And what that does for us, though, is it's less vetted than if you're just going to really well-known casting directors.
Right.
But sometimes I'm willing to go through the exercise of just looking at people because you see what else is out there. Sometimes somebody does it right out of left field. I mean, a lot of times they may not, but it doesn't really matter. It's like anything. The more times at bat and the more things we look at. And the other thing is, as a director, I will say, watching auditions really, really helps me as a director. And it's always helped me as a director because you see how different people are interpreting the script. And I remember back in the day when we used to go sit through live auditions all the time. I kind of miss those days. It was kind of fun. But, I would have a script in front of me and I would go, a lot of directors just go to the callbacks. And I would go to a lot of the castings as well, if I could, if I was available. Again, just to see how people read the script. How are people interpreting it? What are their nuances? How are they delivering? And it really, really helped me as a director hone my skills on where to take this script. And then, of course, when you're there, you could say, hey, what if you did it this way? What if you did it this way? And sometimes if you landed on the right person right there, I mean, the spot was kind of shot before you even got to set, I mean, you knew exactly what you wanted to do. So I think actors can bring as much to a director as a director can bring to an actor. Ooh, that's a good quote.
That is a really good quote. I was about to say that needs to go on a t-shirt because that is really good.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree with you because whenever you watch a taper, if you're there for actual auditions, to see so many people take a couple lines and interpret it completely differently, sometimes you're just like,
I agree.
How? But it is cool because it helps with the people management side where you're just like, oh, that's how they interpreted it.
And I actually think, as you're saying that, I actually think as a writer, it would really be beneficial for you to sit there and watch how people interpret what you've written. So.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think writers should be there for castings because once you see how many times somebody maybe not misinterpreted, but if you have a consistent grouping of people that are reading what you wrote a certain way and that wasn't how you meant it to be, that wasn't the story arc you were going for, right? Then I think it would help with the writing process.
Absolutely. No, I think, look, we all need as much help. Whatever you say about any creative it's a continuum. It never ends. I don't think the learning ever ends. I've been doing this a long time, and And I'm okay saying I learn something new every day still, even though I've done it a million times. And I'll be on set. It's like, okay, I know that, but yet I'm learning it again, or I'm learning something different. And I think learning and continually trying new things and educating yourself and seeing what other people are doing is super, super important to the process.
That's a great word of wisdom. And I feel like the people that succeed in the industry and go the farthest and the longest, they stay hungry for that. And they stay humble for that too. Yeah. When I was working with Corey Wiseman, he was like that. Just, he knew everybody, right? And that guy was so humble. He was just willing to be like, okay, tell me about this. Like, what does that mean? And I'm like, yeah, it was just amazing. It was impressive.
I think, and you just phrased my next T-shirt, humble and hungry. I think that's good.
We need to start, get those into licensing. What
exactly.
Trademark it.
That's a good name for a production company. Humble and hungry.
Humble and hungry. That is a good name for production company.
Yeah.
If you don't steal that, I might. That's actually
okay.
We'll fight for that one.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, well, we'll wrap it up here with, what is your favorite project? I don't know if you can pick, that you have worked on.
Oh man. I mean, I can't. I like any project that everybody leaves happy and that it's a success. There have been some great ones, some exotic travel or some crazy stories, and every project has something else to love. But I think if it's memorable, it's a great project.
That's awesome. No, you're not wrong. And as long as everybody leaves happy, I think that's the main key. Right. The project gets done well. Everybody enjoys it. They're not mad at each other, wish something else. And, it's an odd feeling if that's the case. But no, I totally agree. And then where can people find you to work with you?
The easy way to find me, you could just email me at stewart@stewartcohen.com. That's STEWART @stewartcohen.com. LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram @SC Pictures, website, stewartcohen.com. If you're looking to license content, superstock.com. We'll help you out anywhere you are. Love to work with you.
Yeah, go to his website.
Just remember, I'm humble and hungry.
And with that, we are over and out, guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I really appreciate Stewart for coming on. You were a great guest. Appreciate you a lot. Take care, guys. See you next time.